Tonight, considering a proposed designation of a district of critical planning concern in West Harwich, approximately beginning westerly at the Dennis-Harwich town line, easterly to the Herring River, running approximately along Route 28. The order of the hearing tonight will be a presentation by commission staff, then some comments from the town planner, where the town's Board of Selectmen was a nominating entity for this district of critical planning concern. We'll then take public comment. Whoever wants to provide public comment, please provide it from the podium. That would be great. There's a sign-in sheet. We're not logging you in. It's just helpful to have that in order to read names and have an efficient hearing when your name comes up to provide public comments. Then we'll follow up with any other further Cape Cod Commission staff comment as necessary. And then we will be continuing this hearing at the conclusion tonight to the commission meeting of November 14th. That will be the full commission meeting. I just want to introduce staff here as well from the Cape Cod Commission. Chloe Schaefer, who's the acting chief planner. Sarah Korjeff, who's a preservation and community design planner. Jessica Wilgus, commission counsel. You know this great person here, not a commission staff person, but your town planner. Behind me, Stephen Tupper, who's the transportation program manager with Cape Cod Commission. We have our Harwich Cape Cod Commission representative here tonight, Jacqueline Edston. And we have our Chatham representative as well, Ron Bergstrom. Without further ado, I'll open up to commission staff presentations. Thank you.
Good evening, thanks for coming. My role tonight is to walk through the DCPC tool and sort of the process for nominating a DCPC, and then to review the resources of concern and issues of concern that are covered within this West Harwich DCPC nomination. So with that, let's see if I can get this. So a District of Critical Planning Concern, or DCPC, is this tool is created through the Cape Cod Commission Act, specifically under Section 10, which identifies the ability to establish special planning districts to protect resources of regional significance. And it allows the Cape Cod Commission to establish these districts, and it sets up the process for nominating them and identifying the types of regionally significant resources that can be protected in these districts. The DCPC tool provides some things that aren't typically available to the towns. Specifically, it provides for a moratorium on development within the specific area that's nominated or established as a district of critical planning concern, which allows the town to proceed with developing regulations without the threat of sort of imminent development. It also establishes a specific public process that allows a lot of input from the community during the process of developing these new regulations. And it provides for Cape Cod Commission staff support also during this process as new development regulations are being crafted. I should also mention that it can identify certain types of development that can proceed during this moratorium if they've been identified to not have any potential negative impacts on the resources that are to be protected. So the DCPC process involves several steps. We've already done the first few that are shown on this slide. The town made the nomination of the West Harwich District of Critical Planning Concern on September 16th. We then proceeded to notice that in local papers, which is what actually began the moratorium on development in the area. Then on October 3rd, the Cape Cod Commission voted unanimously to consider this nomination for establishment as a District of Critical Planning Concern. And so that moves us to the next stop, which is tonight holding a public hearing to try to gather public comment on the nomination and the different issues of concern that are identified in the nomination. After tonight, as John mentioned, the next step is for the Cape Cod Commission to actually decide whether or not to recommend a District of Critical Planning Concern in this area, and that'll happen on the November 14th Cape Cod Commission meeting. And then if the Cape Cod Commission votes to recommend the area, the next step is that it goes before the Assembly of Delegates, who actually has the role of designating the area as a district of critical planning concern. And once that happens, if that happens, then the town has 12 months to develop implementing regulations and to adopt implementing regulations to protect those resources. So here's focusing on where we are today, the public hearing, with the idea of gathering as much information as we can to share with the Cape Cod Commission members when they are preparing to take a vote on whether or not to recommend the area as a DCPC. So the Cape Cod Commission Act allows for a variety of different types of districts to be created or nominated as a district of critical planning concern. And that really, the wide range reflects the variety of regional resources that we have and areas, types of resources that could be protected with special regulations. The Harwich nomination here for the West Harwich DCPC identifies 3 types of districts. The first is cultural, historic, architectural, and archaeological. The second is an economic development district. And the third is a transportation management district. And I'll talk through specific resources for each of those 3 areas. So this map shows the boundaries of the proposed, or the nominated district. The actual boundaries are shown with the sort of dark blue line that you can see, but essentially the district follows Route 28 and the CH1 zoning district from the Dennistown line on the west to almost the edge of the Herring River on the east. And it primarily includes those areas that are currently zoned CH1 or commercial, but it also includes the rear portions of lots that extend beyond that commercial zone and into the residential zones, which are shown in yellow and kind of cream on that map. So one of the significant resources in this area is historic resources. We know that there are 24 structures that date from the mid-1700s to the early 1900s within this area. And they're shown, each of them with the red circle here. And we know that the Mass Historical Commission has already evaluated those historic structures in 2016 and determined that as a group they are eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places as a historic district. This area is also significant from a cultural and historic standpoint, sort of as a gateway area given its location on Route 28 and right at the Dennistown line. And because of the unique architectural features and because of the proximity of the historic buildings to the roadway, redevelopment in this area could have a significant impact on the community character. The second type of district that, a reason that this district was nominated as a DCPC is an economic resource district. And I think this really relates to the community character issue because the character of this area really helps to contribute to the economic success of the area. And that's one of the reasons that people are concerned about potential changes in the character and how that might affect the local economy. Also, this area, the vast majority of the area that's nominated is within a regional policy plan designated community activity center, which encompasses much of Dennisport as well as this commercial area of West Harwich. And there's a belief that creating special regulations that would help to guide any new development in this area could really enhance the small-scale local economy in this area. The third type of district or of resource that's addressed in this DCPC nomination is transportation. And because this follows Route 28, which is a heavily traveled road with approximately 10,000 trips per day, there's a concern about the volume of traffic through this area, but there's also safety concerns. We know that in the time period of 2013 to 2017 that there were 40 crashes in this, within this designated area. And we also know that currently the area lacks sufficient pedestrian and bicycle accommodations to allow for safe travel in those other modes. So those are all issues that have been identified by the town and recognized by the commission in the nomination. And while our purpose is to hear comments from all of you about the nomination, what you think about the different resources, and whether you have any questions or concerns, I want to first turn to Charlene Greenhouse to talk about the town's nomination.
There are a couple seats in front if you care to sit down. I don't know.
Hi, thank you and good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Charlene Greenhouse. I am your town planner. Sarah gave a wonderful overview of the proposal. As she mentioned, on September 16th, the Board of Selectmen did vote unanimously to refer this to the Cape Cod Commission as a potential DCPC. This has been supported by the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, as well as the Historic, I always get this wrong, Harwich Historic District and Historical Commission. Why is this important to us? Why is this important to Harwich and frankly the region? The proposed district is the entrance to Harwich along the southerly Route 28 corridor. The area is known as Captain's Row, and due to the number of old captains' homes. Sarah reviewed the different district criteria that would be involved in here, and as highlighted, there are a number of homes and structures that appear on the Mass Cultural Resource Inventory System and have been identified as a potential for listing as a national, on the National Historic Register. There is a group that has been working very long and hard on this designation and trying to preserve this area. So they have done yeoman's work on this. The application that I submitted to the commission, which is almost 600 pages, is filled with a lot of information that was provided by that group. And what really brought this to light? Recently, the planning board had a site plan before it for 48 and 52 Route 28. And as part of that, and that was a 7-month process from when they made application to when it was actually finally withdrawn without prejudice, because there was so much public input. We had over 100 people who showed up towards the end of those public hearings. But that was a proposal for a 7,400 square foot retail structure with associated parking. The structure at 52, which is on the historic list, and is currently under a demo delay through the Historic Commission. You know, it really brought to light that we may be losing some of our precious captains' homes in this area to make way for construction for larger retail businesses that, you know, may not be in keeping with the community character and perhaps the needs of not only the residents but also the visitors to this area as well as Harwich as a whole. So it really brought to light that, wait a minute, something needs to be done here. And so the nomination process was put together. This does provide us an opportunity to look comprehensively at the development potential of the proposed district under existing zoning and to provide more effective regulation and guidance to property owners and developers. Oftentimes we get questions of, well, what does the town want to see? We'll be able to tell them now. This also will provide an opportunity to incentivize appropriate development while also ensuring appropriate layout, design, scale for desirable uses. And this is an important aspect in gaining balance between protecting community character, which is cultural heritage and community design, and addressing realistic commercial economic needs of the communities as well as traffic impacts. And with that, I have nothing more to say.
Sign-in list. We'll open this up to public comments, and I will consult the list here. You can outline it. Why don't we actually begin, if there are any other public officials from the town of Harwich who would like to provide testimony this time. Let's start with them. Going. Oh. Okay. Mr. Howell?
Very quickly. we very much appreciate the efforts of Charlene. She did an awful lot of work on this under the gun because of that project, so hats off to her.
How about Virginia Doyle?
Good evening. I'd like to just read a quote from Richard Moe, who's the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Preservation is simply having a good sense to hold on to things that are well designed, that link us with our past in a meaningful way, and that have plenty of good use left in them. And I think that's what our efforts have all been about, and I would like to say thank you to Duncan Berry and Sally Urbano, who have worked tirelessly for the last 6 years to get us to where we are today. We are so fortunate in West Harwich to have these jewels among us, and we appreciate and are humbled by your considering our proposal. We hope that this will be well received and that we can take our efforts and give this gift back to the town of Harwich as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Sally Urbano?
Good evening, everyone. I have a letter to read to you from my neighbor that couldn't be here. It's from Dottie Damon.
If I could get a copy of that afterwards, that would be
I'll give you
terrific.
this one, surely. To whom it concerns. As longtime residents along Herring River in West Harwich for nearly 75 years, we are in complete support of actions taken so far to preserve and protect our very special neighborhood, which includes numerous captains' houses, as well as church, cemetery, and schoolhouse. In the past, the town succeeded in a major vote to protect Herring River by removing the dump and ending accrued pollution along this conservation area. The Baptist Church and West Harwich Schoolhouse remain of major significance to the historic area. We have been in strong support these past months as we have attended multiple town meetings in an effort to have zoning updated to preserve the character of what we consider and envision to be a historic village, one among the many villages of Harwich. Please help us achieve our goal of being identified as a district of critical planning concern at the meeting on Tuesday, October 22nd, which we regretfully cannot attend. Signed, Lawrence and Dorothy Damon.
Thank you.
Now mine. I kept mine short because I will note it's very near dinner time. And I also appreciate very much that you're here. I'm giving you an overall elevator synopsis so very quickly. You've heard the expression, it takes a village. In this case, it takes more than a village. It started 7 years ago with a grassroots group. It soon involved the Board of Selectmen, the town administration, the town department, including planning and our own Charlene, various boards and commissions, the Harwich Chamber of Commerce, and many of the business owners along Route 28. It moved to the county level and individuals within the Cape Cod Commission, and then to the state level. You've heard that the state made a site visit, but they also had a site visit with MassDOT, who walked that 28 corridor that we're discussing tonight, and that also included our neighbors in Dennis who attended with us. Discussion revolved around the roadway, yes, but also how to be good neighbors to one another and to create a cohesive environment. I'm very excited to support efforts for District of Critical Planning Concern, and I look forward to your insights and your expertise. Now is the time. Thank you.
Is there anybody who would like to speak but didn't sign up to do so? This might be one of the quickest meetings I've ever experienced. I guess it's that dinner thing. Yeah, any follow-up comments, or are there any questions anybody would like to ask commission staff?
The lack of questions and people speaking doesn't mean that we're really very, very impressed with this whole thing, and we really want this to work. Yeah. It's important. So they may be thinking about their dinner, but I want to tell you it's a big thing for us. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe like at school, all those in favor, raise your hand.
Okay. Okay. Any further comments from staff?
I see it.
Oh, Mr. Berry.
Just a quick question, if I may. What is, so the process from here goes to a referral to the Assembly of Delegates?
No, it's, at the end of the hearing tonight, I will continue this hearing to the full Cape Cod Commission, November 14th meeting of the full Cape Cod Commission. I think at that meeting, I think we will be prepared with a decision where the commission will consider proposing that designation and sending it to the Assembly of Delegates. If the Assembly of Delegates adopts the designation by ordinance, it becomes a approved designation.
Okay.
As Sarah went through the time of this, after the Assembly would approve an ordinance, then the matter would come back to the town of Harwich, and I'm sure Commission staff would consult and advise on the development of local regulations and furtherance of that DCPC ordinance.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I say
Oh,
something?
yeah.
And at the staff level and even at the planning board level, and possibly Board of Selectmen, we're gonna actually start looking at those changes even before the Assembly approves, because for some reason, if they don't approve, we still need to do something. So it won't just go away if for some reason it does not receive the full approval by the Assembly. You know, we are committed to doing what we can to get necessary zoning amendments to the town meeting in May of 2020.
I'll just elaborate on that a tiny bit, that when the Cape Cod Commission meets on November 14th and votes whether or not to forward the establishment of this area as a DCPC, their decision will actually spell out specific guidelines for the town to use as they're developing implementing regulations. And the purpose of that is to make sure that the resources that have been identified in the DCPC, these significant resources, that they are actually going to be protected in some way by new regulations. And so there will be a series of guidelines that say, essentially, these are certain things that the town needs to explore in their new regulations, or provide some alternative way to ensure protection of these resources that have been identified.
Thanks, Sarah. Mr. McParland.
Mr. Chairman, Joe McParland, Chairman of the Planning Board. You said it's coming back, assuming it makes it through that situation in the county, and does it come back to the Board of Selectmen or to the Planning Board?
I think, yeah, multiple. I think it's multiple.
Yeah, it comes back to the town as a whole, really, because ultimately those implementing regulations have to be adopted at town meeting. So really everybody will play a role. But in terms of the drafting of those implementing regulations, I think your planning board, your town planner, certainly your Board of Selectmen, any of the other town boards that have a role in those resources will be sort of the key players.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, as Mr. McParland knows, the planning board is the mechanism by which the public hearing process will be held for any zoning amendments that are proposed. So there will be public hearings before the planning board. So I hope not quite as many people as we had at the hearings for the site plan review that we had this past winter and spring and summer. You know, I hope we have a good turnout for those when those come out. And they will be advertised and word will get out, I promise.
Mr. Ford.
Steve Ford, Selectman here in the town of Harwich. Just a quick question, as it moves to the commission, is there anything that the folks in this room or the selectmen should be watching out for to make sure that the commission would act favorably, or should we just rely on the communication between Charlene and the 600-page document that she's put together and all the work? I mean, is there, I just don't want to let anything go by the wayside as we go through the process, so.
Well, I think on November 14th, the commission will be holding another public hearing on this. So, of course, public testimony is by right, it's welcomed, and I think just any correspondence from the public in favor of the DCPC and the specific resources that have been referenced would be helpful to the commission.
Stephen brings up a really good point, and I think the public at large needs to know this, and frankly, some of the commission, because a lot of the newer members have no idea of the genesis of the DCPC. If absent a DCPC, we as a town could not grapple with this problem in the comprehensive way that the DCPC gives you. It's literally a clean piece of paper that allows you to move from here forward with a plan that has to be adhered to. There are no trapdoors. I mean, zoning itself affords grandfathering and a bunch of other things that the DCPC actually can look at in a comprehensive way and say, hold it a second, we're going to start from day one here forward. So that's what makes this really important, is to be able to have the DCPC be successful and then allow us to write the regulations. If we did it on our own, there would not be the same outcome.
Mr. Bergstrom.
Hi, I'm Ron Bergstrom. I'm the Chatham representative of the Cape Cod Commission. I'm also a county commissioner, but I sat on the Assembly of Delegates for 12 years. Many DCPCs came before us. I never voted against any of them. And I have a feeling I won't have a chance to make that vote, but if you talk to Elizabeth Harder and so on, and the other members of the Assembly who ultimately it'll be in their lap to approve this, but they usually have great respect for the Cape Cod Commission, and I don't know that they've ever opposed any of this. But just a word. I've pushed for historic and architectural preservation for a long time. In Chatham, we have a group called Protect Our Past that jumped up, and I'm a member of them, and I went at a meeting. And I think that, you know, maybe first reason people come here are the beaches, but the second reason they come here is the vision they get when they drive down our roads and so on. Very important economically. So it's not just that we want to look at a nice building. It's part of the economic draw of the Cape, and it's very important. And fortunately, you know, we have to use every tool that we have, and I applaud the people in Harwich for pushing this as long as they did. But we have a tool given to us by the legislature that other places don't have, you know, and through the Cape Cod. So if somebody says, well, I have property rights and I can do what I want, we can say, no, that's restricted by the Cape Cod Commission Act and the DCPC. So we have to use, even though it seems like a losing battle sometimes, we have to use every tool that we have, and I certainly will look on this favorably. I don't know, does it come to the, doesn't come to the commissioners, does it?
The county commissioners, or it does come back to the Cape Cod Commission for a vote.
Okay.
And
It does come to the county commissioners too, because it's an ordinance.
It is, so we'll have to vote on it.
Yes.
Well, I'll have to think about that.
I know where you live, Ron.
But you raise a good point too. As it proceeds to the Assembly of Delegates, that's a public hearing process, because there would be a proposed ordinance before the Assembly of Delegates. So, thank you for reminding me of that. Okay, well, everybody wants to eat dinner. Thank you. I'm going to continue this to the Cape Cod Commission meeting of November 14th, 2019, 3 p.m., the East Wing Conference Room, Barnstable County Complex, 3195 Main Street, Route 6A, Barnstable, Massachusetts. And thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening.